Welcome back, dear friends, to another exciting episode of Exploring the Advent of Divine Justice. We are on part 24, covering paragraphs 116 through 124. And without any further ado, we'll have our opening prayer. Thank you so much.
Make firm our steps, O Lord, in thy path, and strengthen thou our heart in thine obedience. Turn our faces toward the beauty of thy oneness, and gladden our bosoms with the signs of thy divine unity. Adorn our bodies with the robe of thy bounty, and remove from our eyes the veil of sinfulness, and give us the chalice of thy grace, that the essence of all beings may sing thy praise before the vision of thy grandeur. Reveal then thyself, O Lord, by thy merciful utterance and the mystery of thy divine being, that the holy ecstasy of prayer may fill our souls, a prayer that shall rise above words and letters and transcend the murmur of syllables and sounds, that all things may become merged into nothingness before the revelation of thy splendor. Lord, these are servants that have remained fast and firm in thy covenant and thy testament, that have held fast under the cord of constancy in thy cause, and clung under the hem of the roll of thy grandeur. Assist them, O Lord, with thy grace. Confirm them with thy power, and strengthen their loins in obedience to thee. Thou art the pardoner, the gracious Abdul-Baha.
Beautiful, Miss Claudia. Thank you so much. All right. Here we go. Let me share my screen. Okay. So in our last sessions, we read paragraphs 116 through 124. Let me supersize it, as they say. And I'm just going to re-go over the introduction to recapture what the essence of these paragraphs were about. Then we'll go over the major key points, then get into our study, okay? These final paragraphs of the Advent of Divine Justice, this is where it starts on paragraph 116, and it is a transitionary paragraph where the beloved guardian opens and says, one more word in conclusion. So it's his final thoughts right there. One more word in conclusion. Okay, so this is his transitionary. If you want to recap the whole of Advent Divine Justice, it has been a great epistle written to the North American Baha'i community, addressing the inner transformation as well as the external transformation necessary to bring about a massive launching of a teaching plan. Okay, that was a very quick, summary that I just did. Now he's addressing the generality of the North American Baha'i, North America at that point in time. The challenges, not only political, that are facing. That's all the events that are happening at that specific moment in time, okay? So here the beloved guardian focuses on the future as well as the destiny of the American nation to become the first nation to build the tabernacle of the great peace. And this is coming from Abdul-Baha. And if you recall, this is when in promulgation of universal peace that Abdul-Baha, he in San Francisco, when he was in, he gave a talk in Sacramento, and it was a conference that was in San Francisco that there was the coming together, the first coming together for United Nations, okay? And this is when that announcement came, when he was in Sacramento. He said, he wanted this nation to build the tabernacle of the most great peace and proclaim the oneness of mankind. to lead all nations spiritually. So that was the wishes of Abdu'l-Baha. The beloved guardian explains that their role will unfold through various stages. This is not going to be, oh, suddenly, oh, we're the lesser peace. Oh, in a few years, we'll jump to the most great peace. This is going to unfold through stages, and these stages will take time. And this is also from the beloved guardian. Two factors that will force this American nation to abandon its current isolationism. And this is, remember, the beloved guardian is writing in this last paragraph directly about what is happening at this point, at this time in 1938. The current policy at that time was isolationism. And every so often, this American country likes to go down the same path. And even in past administration, there was, you talk of, keeping it, this idea of isolationism, America first kind of ideology, that why should we go out and do anything else around the world, And this is an isolationism mentality. So two factors that will force this American nation to abandon its current isolationism. On the one hand, the continuing deterioration in the world political situation. The whole world's getting worse, the beloved guardian is saying. And he has been saying this over and over and over, okay? And how many quotes we went through from His Holiness Baha'u'llah, where he says, the fortunes of humanity are going to get steadily worse, right? So this here, he says, this will force this American nation to move outside of its isolationism, okay? And this is one. The other one is the advances in travel and communication will bridge the distances between the American continent and other parts of the world. If you recall, in the paragraph, it says that these great oceans, the great oceans of the Atlantic and the Pacific are now, just small, here it says, the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, with every acceleration in the march of science, are steadily shrinking into mere channels, right? So it's the advancements in the sciences are really pushing that way of communication. I can talk to almost every other day, I talk to someone in China, of all places. China, that's thousands of miles away, and I can talk to them on instant communication on my phone. So it's an incredible world that we have this level of communication with one another. And so this is how these oceans at one time were big obstacles of separation. Now they're not. And so this has brought potentially humanity ever closer together. I mean, look, these potential recessions that are coming around the corner with the injection of trillions of dollars into the United States economy, this will affect the whole world, by the depression of the dollar, and it will cause a trickle-down effect and affect the whole world because of this injection of money was trying to bolster our economy because it was going under a collapse due to COVID. Now, this massive injection of monies without a foundation is going to affect potentially the whole world because we're so interconnected. You see how it is? And this is how all the world economies are so linked. So we're going to move on. This is extremely interesting passages here at the very end of the Advent to Divine Justice. In our last session, we covered these key points, the capacities and powers of America have been generated in the result of the creative energies of the world order of Baha'u'llah released within this nation. This is the coming about of twin manifestations of God. And not only that, the ambassador per se of His Holiness Baha'u'llah, His Holiness Abdul Baha, being sent, by the divine will to come to America and traverse this land for 239 days, injecting the spiritual energies across this great continent. And then through the divine will of Abdul Baha, revealing the tablets of the divine plan, injecting even more energies into this continent. And through that power, generating the lionesses and the lions to go forth and pioneer and promote and promulgate His divine word. So you see how much energy has been infused and just pushed and generated into this American continent through the divine will. So this is an incredible American continent. And I shared with the class, I don't know if you read your email, and it was from Abdul Baha in Egypt. And I shared that with all of you, my students, where Abdul Baha says, there is no comparison between America and Europe. America stands alone. And so this is an incredible space that we are fortunate to be as American Baha'is, but it also comes with great responsibility. So this is something that we have to understand. If we are on the shoulders, standing on the shoulders of these heroes and heroines from the past, because we are the descendants of the dawn breakers. And when I say dawn breakers, I'm not just talking about those amazing souls in the cradle of the faith, namely in Iran and Persia. The dawn breakers to me also are these heroes and heroines that have tread and sacrificed here in America. And they are dawn breakers because this faith is so young and this dawn is just breaking. And we are descendants of them. And we also need to know that we have a duty and a part to play. So this country has great capacities, God-given capacities that have been conferred upon this nation, okay? And this is moving through two processes. This is very important, and we're going to explore this. And I literally, right before class, I was reading a letter from the Supreme Body, and I just found it, and I inserted it right there into this presentation, so you'll read it. Okay, so cool. So these are two distinctive processes that are at play. The first is the followers of Baha'u'llah in America manifest these capacities by building this Baha'i administrative order and teaching the faith, okay? So this is the first process, okay? There's two twin processes at play, and this is the first one, okay? The second process that is at play, whether aware or unaware, this is the beloved guardian speaking, whether aware or unaware, right? This process is at work. And this process is in regards to these same capacities that are affecting the government and its people and shaping the destiny of the nation under the influence of world political and economic forces. So this is the other process that is at play, the major plan of God, okay? So there's this major plan that is unfolding in this great country of ours. And it's moving, shifting things. And often we are unaware of what's at the hand of God is doing. But we have a part to play in the minor plan of God. So another major point is Abdul Baha advised a very high government official that the best way for him to serve his country was to contribute towards applying the principle of federalism underlying the American government to the nations of the world. We also mentioned President Woodrow Wilson was considerably influenced by the Baha'i teachings. And there's in the Baha'i Library, website, you can, if you Google Baha'i Library website, President Woodrow Wilson, Baha'i faith, President Woodrow Wilson was not a Baha'i. His daughter, one of his daughters, heard about the faith and had Baha'i books, okay? And so she had Baha'i books and she was interested in them. She herself was also not a Baha'i, but she was interested in them and she was reading the Baha'i books. And that also had, when I say influenced, the 14 points that was presented to the United Nations at that point in time. So this was a significant influence. And when we mentioned that he was the unappreciated president and that what he did was I want to use the exact wording. The unappreciated president, here it is. And he was acclaimed as signalizing the dawn of the most great peace. What he did as the unappreciated president, okay, whose high endeavors, how much nullified by a visionless generation, Abdu'l-Baha, through his own pen, acclaimed as signalizing the dawn of the most great peace. What an incredible president. You know, when I was reading the Advent of Divine Justice in 2019, 2020, right? Well, as I was doing this presentation, I had no idea how great Woodrow Wilson was in the history and scope of all the presidencies. We all, in classes, we always hear about George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, you know, the greats, you know? You never hear about Woodrow Wilson, you know? It's like, but look at, wow, you know, the spiritual power of what he did, you know, to signalize the dawn of the most great peace, you know, by what he did. So that is an incredible action. And we're going to just touch on that. And that probably, you know, no other place could you find it about any of the other presidents, you know? I haven't seen anything mentioning Abraham Lincoln by name. I haven't seen anything mentioning any of the other presidents. And how great Abraham Lincoln, we think, you know, he freed all Emancipation Proclamation, right? He was never mentioned by name, right? So that, and he's mentioned here twice in Advent of Divine Justice, here by name. So that's significant, at least in my eyes, of what he did for peace. Now moving on to these two processes driving America. And we mentioned that the first is the raising of the institutions and the teaching work in this country. And this is in paragraphs 116 through 118. The beloved guardian is highlighting the destiny of the American people. And His Holiness Abdu'l-Baha is quoted here. And this would be the first nation to establish international agreements, announce the unity of mankind, and unfurl the banner of the most great peace. Abdu'l-Baha explained the reasons why the American nation was worthy of being the first to establish the great peace and proclaiming the oneness of mankind. So here it is. I put the bullets for emphasis, okay? This is the reasons why, okay? For America hath developed powers and capacities greater and more wonderful than other nations, okay? Reason number one. Another reason, the American nation is equipped and empowered to accomplish that which will adorn the pages of history. So it's already equipped. It has developed powers and capacities. It's equipped and empowered to accomplish that which will adorn the pages of history, to become the envy of the world and be blessed in both the East and the West for the triumph of its people. This American continent gives signs and evidences of very great advancement. So it's not only has developed the powers, capacities, it's equipped with these powers and capacities. It is also giving off signs and evidences of these powers, capacities that is already equipped with them. Then Abdu'l-Baha goes further. He says its future is even more promising, for its influence and illumination are far-reaching. So it's not just going to affect America itself, but it will affect the whole world. Its future, its influence, and its illumination are far-reaching. And it will lead all nations spiritually. So these are the reasons Abdu'l-Baha states is why this American nation is worthy of being the first to establish this great peace. Okay? And this is all was right there in that extract. I just bullet pointed it so you can follow the reasons outlined. In paragraph 117, the beloved guardian explains that the capacities, the powers referred to by Abdu'l-Baha for America were generated as the result of these creative energies of the world order of Baha'u'llah being released within this nation. This God-given potentialities conferred on this American nation are manifested through these two distinctive processes. And we've mentioned these. The first process, the followers of Baha'u'llah in America are manifesting these capacities by building the Baha'i administrative order and teaching the faith. Okay? So it's not just about, okay, yeah, I go to a spiritual assembly, and we're having more spiritual assembly meetings and we're building up the assemblies. It's not just about building better and more assemblies. It's also about going hand in hand with the teaching work, right? So it's not just raising the institutional capacity, but it's also raising the teaching work. So this is a process that needs to develop within, which is the lesser process, which is the lesser plan, part of the plan of God that is part of the spiritual destiny of America. The second process is these same capacities are affecting the American government, its peoples, and shaping the destiny of this nation under the influence of world, political, and economic forces. So this is a second process that, whether they're aware of it or unaware of it, that's what is the beloved guardian said, whether they're aware or unaware. This is another force. In paragraph 118, the beloved guardian confirms that both the American Baha'i community, through conscious efforts, this is the conscious efforts part, right? The American Baha'i community, through its conscious efforts, suffering, and experience, and their countrymen, unconscious of source, are contributing towards the realization of the hopes of Abdu'l-Baha and his promises for America. So it's two processes, one conscious, one unconscious. And these are these twin processes that are driving this American nation to lead all nations spiritually. Now, this is a letter from the beloved guardian, and this was written in 1947. And I found it apt, as they say, to tie in. This is June 5th, 1947. The beloved guardian here is highlighting the nature of these processes. And I'm going to let Miss Deborah read this, Thank you, Miss Deborah.
Indeed, if we would read aright the signs of the times and appraise correctly the significances of contemporaneous events that are impelling forward both the American Baha'i community and the nation of which it forms a part on the road leading them to their ultimate destiny, we cannot fail to perceive the workings of two simultaneous processes generated as far back as the concluding years of the heroic age of our faith, each clearly defined, each distinctly separate, yet closely related and destined to culminate in the fullness of time in a single glorious consummation. One of these processes is associated with the mission of the American Baha'i community, the other with the destiny of the American nation. The one serves directly the interests of the administrative order of the faith of Baha'u'llah. The other promotes indirectly the institutions that are to be associated with the establishment of his world order.
Excellent. Very well read.
Thank you.
So there we are. These two processes here, the beloved guardians re-emphasizing that these two processes originated as far back as the concluding years of the heroic age of our faith. Each clearly defined, each distinctly separate, yet closely related, and destined to culminate in the fullness of time in a single glorious consummation. The first of these processes is associated with the mission of the American Baha'i community. What is our mission? The other is with the destiny of the whole American nation. This one serves directly the interests of the administrative order of the faith of Baha'u'llah. The other promotes indirectly the institutions that are being associated with the establishment of his world order. So one is the raising of the administrative order of the faith of Baha'u'llah, directly. That's our job. The other one is indirectly. And this is the hand of God. How that works and how that comes in. And it's the collapsing of anything and everything. And they will eventually turn to the Baha'i model. Look at this beautiful, beautiful system of elections that we have. You know, eventually they'll turn to it as a model of how to do elections in society. And because look how much money is involved, corruption is involved, campaigning, electioneering, everything is involved in this type of elections. And the most beautiful system I've ever seen is the election of the Supreme Body Universal House of Justice, where people from all around the world, without canvassing, without promoting, without money involvement, go, they in a prayerful attitude. Imagine that. I cannot believe it. Imagine you're having a prayerful attitude to go vote for your political candidates. Think about that. What a day we're coming to, in the future. And this is the system that will eventually bring about that. This is the system. The Baha'i system will eventually be the system of the future Baha'i of the world, because this is the model of how elections should be, free from all of this, intertwining of money and politics. And because remember, one of the great forces of destruction, forces of darkness, the beloved guardian mentions, that is hampering the progress of this American nation is corruption. And corruption is the intertwining of, and we mentioned that in great detail in this course, and that was that not only is the bringing about of money and bribery and all those horrible things we talked about, and it is really eating at the very fibers of this American nation. And so this Baha'i Baha'i administrative order is pure in that sense. It is free from that corruption element. And so that is really, this is modeled, the system that has been unveiled by our central figures is free from that stain. And so this is something that will eventually become a model for the whole world. And that's why the Baha'i community has to raise it up through not only crystallizing these institutions, but also teaching. Remember, there was two things. So it was not only raising the institutions and the capacities and everything, but to teach. So that was the first process. The second process was that the hand of God is moving in this to the entire greater society. This is the major plan at work. And this second part, this one serves directly the interests of the administrative order of faith. The second one promotes indirectly the institutions that are to be associated with the establishment of his world order. So it will be indirectly, but it will also be connected to the institutions. Interesting how that is going to come about. So these two processes are similar to the concept of the major and minor plans of God, according to the Universal House of Justice. The major plan of God, tumultuous in its progress, working through mankind as a whole, tearing down barriers to world unity, and forging humankind into a unified body in the fires of suffering and experience. This process will produce in God's due time the lesser peace, which is the political unification of the world. Mankind at that time can be likened to a body that is unified, but without life. That's really what the lesser peace is. It's the political unification of the world. It's the lesser peace. But it doesn't have life. So it's literally like a light bulb. If all the glass pieces come and the filament come together, you put the whole thing together and you're like, wow, we have a light bulb, but the electrical current has not come to it, meaning that they have not recognized the source. And when that comes, the light bulb comes on, you see? So this is, the lesser peace is the unification, political unification of humanity, and that will come about. And as assured from His Holiness Baha'u'llah, Abdu'l-Baha, the beloved guardian, all right, that this will come about. Now, these are the stages of the major plan of God, the minor plan of God. What does it entail? The major plan of God, as mentioned, tumultuous in its progress, working through humanity as a whole. Humanity is unconscious of it. They don't know. All they see around is more disasters, more crisis, everything's getting worse. It's just like getting worse, right? But they're unconscious. They're suffering, they're experiencing, tearing down barriers towards unity. But unified body without life. This is part of the major plan of God. And eventually the outcome of this major plan of God will be the lesser peace. The minor plan of God is the working through the Baha'i community. They're conscious of the source. It's like you know where the electricity is coming from. So you know the source. You're conscious of it. Now you have to the detailed instructions. You have to follow the great electrician and try to promote this electrical source and the current so it can reach as many light bulbs as possible. So you understand the voltage, you understand the current, and now your job as Baha'is is to connect the electrical current to the light bulb, which is the unification of humanity. You follow? So this is our job. Our job is this continuous work to make sure that this current stays active and is powerful and gains a force through the community. So continuing divine guidance, breathing life into the body, creating true unity and spirituality, and the ultimate goal of the minor plan of God will be the establishment of the most great peace, which is what happens when that current, because they're aware of that, knowing the connection to the source, is connected to the major plan of God, which would be namely that light bulb. So you've been working on the current, which is the electrifying and bringing about the institutions and teaching, and you've now reached that level where all peoples are now saying, yes, Baha'u'llah is the manifestation of God for this day and age. Yes, Baha'u'llah has the answers for this day and age. So now they're connecting it to the source. And yes, we have brought the leaders of the world together, and they're working and collaborating together. But now we have a prescription to bring about the true unification of this planet. So this is where now the Baha'is can present that as a model. So where the Baha'i community has reached a level where it can now present it to the greater society at a much higher level. And that will be eventually the reaching. And this is all stage. This is going to be, in not one event, but this will be reaching that level where the most great peace will come. So the minor plan of God, which is the second part of these two processes, is the task of breathing life into this unified body, of creating true unity and spirituality. Imagine that they're breathing life into this body. That's really what a Baha'i should be doing. We are the vivifiers, breathing life into each other. It's as though we were dead. When we speak, should be words of love. The words of the creative word should be coming out of our mouth and giving hope, giving life. We should be vivifiers, giving life. And eventually, through what we are doing as teachers of God, another compilation that came out from the Supreme Body is called Quickeners of Mankind. Quickeners of Mankind. That's what a teacher of the cause is. It's a quickener, bringing the dead to life, quickeners. And through our teaching work, which is as Baha'is, we are breathing life into this body. And we as Baha'is should be united, moving together, teaching together, expanding, promulgating, working, collaborating, and as an organism growing and growing and growing. And through the other process, eventually the Baha'i community will have synergistic effects, and eventually it will culminate and the most great peace shall come. This is what it says, culminating in this most great peace is that of the Baha'is who are laboring consciously. We should be laboring consciously with the detailed instructions from whom? Where is these instructions coming from? In this day and age, it's coming from our Supreme Body. The Supreme Body, Universal House of Justice, has been sending out instructions. This is what you should do, coming from the mandate, whether it's the Rizwan message, whether it's a message from the Universal House of Justice, and these are the detailed instructions in this day and the continuing divine guidance to erect the fabric of the kingdom of God on earth, into which they call their fellow men, thus conferring upon them eternal life. So this is the minor plan, dear friends. This is the minor plan which every one of us is called upon to fulfill. So here is another illustration, these two great processes at work in the world. Major plan of God through humanity as a whole. They're unconscious of the source and direction, which and which will ultimately lead to this lesser peace, the political unification, and the ceasefire, right? The minor plan of God, which we as Baha'i community are working, striving for, is through the Baha'i community. We are consciously aware of it. We are receiving detailed instructions, continuing divine guidance, and through our work as Baha'is will ultimately achieve the most great peace, which is the ultimate achievement of bringing about a peace through this connecting the major plan to the minor plan, and which will ultimately lead to the most great peace, the kingdom of God on earth, this golden age, the ultimate achievement of the Baha'i world commonwealth. So this is what, this will come in stages. So this is these just an outline of what these two great processes are. And this is the letter and message that I came across right before I was about to present this class. So I'm going to let Miss Claudia read this one to you. So thank you so much, Miss Claudia.
We are told by Shoghi Effendi that two great processes are at work in the world. The great plan of God, tumultuous in its progress, working through mankind as a whole, tearing down barriers to world unity and forging mankind into a unified body in the fires of suffering and experience. This process will produce in God's due time a lesser peace, the political unification of the world. Mankind at that time can be likened to a body that is unified but without life. The second process, the task of breathing life into this unified body, of creating true unity and spirituality, culminating in the most great peace, is that of the Baha'is who are laboring consciously with detailed instructions and continuing divine guidance to erect the fabric of the kingdom of God on earth, into which they call their fellow men, thus conferring upon them eternal life. The working out of God's major plan proceeds mysteriously in ways directed by Him alone. But the minor plan that He has given to us to execute as our part in His grand design for the redemption of mankind is clearly delineated. It is to this work that we must devote all of our energies, for there is no one else to do it.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Claudia. So there we are, the two processes that are driving America and really driving the world, the two major plans of God, the major plan and the minor plan. Now we shift gears. We're going to start talking about moving out of isolationism, okay? During the 1930s, the memory of the tragic losses during the First World War and the Great Depression, it pushed public opinion and government policies towards isolationism. Such an orientation meant non-involvement in European and Asian conflicts, as well as international politics. This, however, did not stop America maintaining its interest in Latin America. The Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, securing America from the east and the west, assisted the country to maintain its isolation from European conflicts. On one level, I don't blame America for its isolationist type of policy after its suffering from World War I. It suffered such heavy losses, and it was after, and the effects of that was really tough on this American nation. And so after World War I and really the Great Depression, I don't want to part in anything. we got our own stuff to worry about, right? So it entered into a period of isolationism. In paragraph 119, the beloved guardian explains that in light of the deterioration of the world political situation on all fronts and the steady shrinking of the travel world, this American nation would not be able to continue its isolationism, and it has no option but to play a more active role in world affairs. This could be driven either by national security or humanitarian motives. So here the beloved guardian is saying that it's national security. We have to be aware of what's going on in the world. It's to our own country's protection. But also, it is also if we care about our brothers and sister countries around the world, what is going on. So that level of humanitarian motive where crises are happening, food shortages, water shortages, sicknesses, illnesses, devastations due to climate around the world. We as an American nation have these great resources and abilities and spiritual mandate on top of it. We have the ability to assist our brother, sister countries around the world. Not that we shouldn't be assisting our own country here too. That is a given. But this American nation has been tasked with that too. This is something that is per se a laurel on the crown of this a great American country, that it has been given this honor to go and be and do this. So the beloved guardian here cites the counsels of Abdu'l-Baha to a very high government official that the best way for him to serve his country was to contribute towards applying the principle of federalism underlying the American government to the nation of the world. This was the ideal that President Woodrow Wilson tried unsuccessfully to achieve. And I looked up federalism. I'm not on any level a political science scholar, but I looked up here the definition, and I'm sure there's several of my dear and wonderful friends in attendance that are much more knowledgeable than I am on these terms. So I placed here the definition of federalism. It's the principle of federalism is the division of power among a central government and several regional governments. And by spreading the powers throughout the different states, the framers of the Constitution built a stronger, more effective national government while preserving the existing states and the concept of local self-government. So it's empowering the states by spreading the powers throughout the different states. By doing that, the whole nation as a whole would be stronger. And so this was the idea that Woodrow Wilson was promoting and was unsuccessful to achieve. And I believe in his 14 points was that it was the dissolution of the power of these great powers, so it would be spread out over the different nations of the world. So it wouldn't just be 5 or 6 superpowers like how it is in the UN Security Council. There's like 5 or 6 countries that are, in the UN Security Council, and they have permanent decision over everything and anything. But that power would be disillusioned around all the countries of the world. In the sense of federalism type of the powers would be that division of power. So there would be no permanent seat on a World Security Council. This is as I understand it, that it would be that spreading of the power through the different states. So if there's 206 countries in the world, or give or take, all those countries would have a seat, not just a UN seat, they would have a seat on all talks, all types of communique affecting the interests of our planet, in a sense, because they're a member of the world. And it's not just the superpowers always dominating and domineering with the political, as well as, you know, domineering with their money interests. And just because they have money and firepower, they have to have a permanent seat on, or because they were the drafters of the United Nations, so they have to be on the Security Council. So these are things that, as I understand it, were aspects of federalism. So who was this unappreciated president that twice here the beloved guardian mentions him in paragraph 119? Paragraph 119, the beloved guardian refers to President Woodrow Wilson as an unappreciated president whose ideals were repealed by a visionless generation. That was quoting Abdu'l-Baha. Woodrow Wilson, he was born 1856 through 1924, was the 28th president of the United States, who served 2 terms from 1913 to 1921. And he was an advocate of world peace and is ranked as one of the greatest presidents of the United States. And that was pre-George Floyd. So as a perspective, okay? Post-George Floyd, that was because of his racist ideologies. Well, and we've talked about that several times before. But pre-George Floyd, he was ranked as one of the greatest presidents of our time. President Wilson tried to keep the United States neutral during World War I, but ultimately called on Congress to declare war against Germany in 1917. So he was having this isolationism, trying to stay neutral, don't want to get into war. But what happened? Eventually, they were forced into it. And they were called on Congress to declare war against Germany in 1917 when German submarines attacked US merchant ships. After the war, he helped to develop a peace treaty that included the establishment of the League of Nations. And as part of that treaty was the Treaty of Versailles. And we've talked about this in a few different parts early on. The Senate did not agree to the United States being a member of the League of Nations. Despite this, President Wilson was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. And that was in 1919. Interesting year, right? 1919. According to Abdu'l-Baha, this initiative of President Wilson signalized the dawn of the most great peace, as attested by Shoghi Effendi, paragraph 119. Interesting there, coincidence again. So this is the plaque of his Nobel Peace Prize, there it says. And this right here is the Nobel Peace Prize, 1919, Woodrow Wilson. Okay, then that's his honorary stamp. In one of Abdu'l-Baha's tablets, he makes mentions of President Wilson stating, so this comes in selections from the writings of Abdu'l-Baha. The President of the Republic, Dr. Wilson, is indeed serving the kingdom of God, for he is restless and strives day and night that the rights of all men may be preserved, safe and secure, that even small nations, like greater ones, may dwell in peace and comfort under the protection of righteousness and justice. This purpose is indeed a lofty one. I trust that the incomparable providence will assist and confirm such souls under all conditions. So this is the aspect of federalism when I was talking about that it's not just the superpower nations with the resources of trillions of dollars and super firepowers that we have all the nuclear weapons that if you cross us, we'll drop this or that on you. And we're members of the Security Council that, you know, the United Nations Security Council countries, you cross us, we'll just go and send all the military against you. No. Every country, if it's a member of as a country of the world, should have equal votes and equal rights and equal say. This is the aspect of federalism, and it should be proportionate to population even, you know? So if a country has, so United States, we have say 370 something million population, but there's other countries that have larger populations than we do. So they should have proportionate, you know, voiceage. At least that's my 2 cents. I'm not saying that's the federalism type of, you know, but it should be even based upon, at least my own 2 cents, based upon population. I mean, to having number of votes on the council per se, the World Council, which would be that they're oversee affairs of the world. You see what I'm saying? It should not be dictated by military or economics even. And this is in another letter. This is in Citadel of Faith. Here, the beloved guardian mentions again Woodrow Wilson. In a letter highlighting the blessings conferred on this American nation, to her president, this is a country is a she, the beloved guardian, that's why it's called the Statue of Liberty, is a lady, the Lady Liberty. To her president, the immortal Woodrow Wilson, must be ascribed the unique honor among the statesmen of any nation, whether of the East or of the West, of having voiced statements so akin to the principles animating the cause of Baha'u'llah, and of having more than any other world leader contributed to the creation of the League of Nations, achievements which the pen of the center of God's covenant acclaimed as signalizing the dawn of the most great peace, whose sun, according to that same pen, must needs arise as the direct consequence of the enforcement of the laws of the dispensation of Baha'u'llah. So you see this, the language here is used, dawn, signalizing the dawn of the most great peace. That was quoted from Abdul Baha and quoted into Advent Divine Justice. So here, what an incredible president. What an incredible president. Multiple times quoted by Abdul Baha, multiple times quoted by the beloved guardian, different places, different extracts. Immortal Woodrow Wilson, unique honor. A statesman, whether of the East or West, have never done what he has done. And that's why I can categorically say he is our greatest president. Point blank. Abdul Baha has in multiple tablets has quoted him as the greatest president, and here the beloved guardian has multiple times has written that he has that honor. So I brought a video in, okay, so you can at least see a history, okay, a little bit more detailed. Here you go.
When you hear the name Woodrow Wilson, you might think aloof, intellectual, the professor turned president with the pince-nez for glasses. And yes, that's how it's pronounced.
Who's the college professor with the pince-nez? So he's easy to back.
And that's a French word. But in his new biography of the 28th president, A. Scott Bird wants you to know that Wilson was no cold fish.
Woodrow Wilson was an extremely emotional, romantic man. I don't think there's been a more emotionally turbulent presidency than Wilson's.
This is what's the beginning president. In fact, their dad isn't out of that.
Born in Stanton, Virginia, the son of a Presbyterian minister, Wilson, from a very early age, imbued everything he did with moral purpose.
It's quite amazing. I mean, here's Woodrow Wilson at 9 years old drafting the Constitution for his Little League baseball team. I mean, it's got to be the only Little League team to this day with its own Constitution.
For college, he ventured north to New Jersey to what would become Princeton University. Is it true that when he got to Princeton as an undergraduate, he had never heard the Star-Spangled Banner?
That's true. He had never heard. He was a Southern boy.
He would return to Princeton as its president, transforming what had become something of a country club into a first-rate university. The political bosses of New Jersey took notice and made him an offer he couldn't refuse. To run for governor of New Jersey, which at the time is perhaps the most corrupt state in the Union.
I think you can take the perhaps out of it. In 1910, the very corrupt Democratic machine of very corrupt New Jersey says, who is the squeaky cleanest man in all of New Jersey who could run as our puppet?
But Wilson would be nobody's puppet.
He does get elected, and the first thing he does is kick out the machine. And now everybody in the country is saying, who is this?
Within 2 years, he was elected to the White House. Turned out our only president with a PhD knew how to connect with the masses.
He never spoke down. He always raised the audience to his level. This had a magical effect, especially on the uneducated, because they felt better about themselves for having heard him and understood him.
We want to establish a real partnership between all the people and the federal government.
Wilson didn't just go to the people. He went to Capitol Hill, becoming the first president in 110 years to address Congress in person. He would do so 25 times in his first term alone. His progressive agenda sailed through. The establishment of the Federal Reserve, the 8-hour workday, workman's comp. But on one issue, he was decidedly unprogressive. Under his watch, the District of Columbia and the federal government were segregated racially.
Yeah.
Big backward step.
Woodrow Wilson didn't invent segregation, but he certainly institutionalized it in the government offices in Washington, D.C., which in effect sanctioned segregation throughout the country.
By 1914, the world was at war. The US remained neutral at first. Meanwhile, Wilson's own world was crumbling. His wife Ellen lay dying.
There's a moment where he's literally writing a letter to the heads of state in Europe saying, must you really proceed with war? He's writing that with one hand and holding his dying wife's hand with the other.
But only months after her death, Wilson would fall madly in love with Edith Bowling.
She was the first woman with a driver's license in the District of Columbia.
She had heels.
She had,
Yeah.
Wilson lobbied hard for her. Who has time to write 3 love letters a day while the world is falling apart?
well, Woodrow Wilson made the time he would tell you, and that this was more important because he couldn't serve as president unless he had the woman he loved, basically.
Wilson wooed her during long drives. This was his 1919 Pierce Arrow.
This was his car. It was part of the White House fleet.
Really nice, very comfortable.
It is.
Edith became the second Mrs. Wilson, and she was very buxom.
She was buxom, yeah, yes. And don't think Sigmund Freud didn't make a lot of that. He wrote about this in his marriage.
Is that right?
He did.
That he needed kind of like a mother thing.
Absolutely.
Wilson was reelected as the man who kept us out of war. But within weeks of his second inauguration, he would declare, the world must be made safe for democracy. And it's an about face.
It is an about face, and it is the underpinnings of our foreign policy to this day.
America sent 2 million doughboys to Europe and defeated the Germans. In Paris, Wilson was welcomed as the savior of the world.
It was bigger than anything Napoleon saw, Caesar saw. Now, does all that adulation somehow affect him? I think he still remained the preacher's son with a Christ complex.
Wilson would spend 6 months in Paris. His mission, to establish a League of Nations to prevent all future wars.
If we had some kind of international parliament where every nation could sit, this could ostensibly stop all war.
The US Senate balked, so in 1919, Wilson took his case to the people, a grueling 29-city tour. But outside Pueblo, Colorado, he collapsed. Days later, he suffered a stroke and took to his bed, the left side of his body paralyzed. Edith took control. How much control is still debated.
Was Edith Wilson the first female president of the United States? She would be the first to tell you she made no decisions he would not have made. That being said, nothing got to the president without passing through Edith's hands first.
But not even Edith could convince Wilson to compromise on even minor details concerning the League. The Senate would vote down Wilson's peace plan. The US would not enter the League, dooming it.
Do you think it could have prevented World War II?
Yeah, I'll go on record. I think a League of Nations, Wilson's League of Nations, could have stopped World War II.
A controversial take on a controversial president whose influence is with us today.
We stand in the presence of an awakened nation.
The most lasting piece of the Wilson legacy has to be that one line, the world must be made safe for democracy, for good or for bad. That really, though, has become the foundation of our foreign policy. And whenever this country even thinks of intervening in Syria or in Egypt or Iraq or wherever, it started with Wilson. It's really that Wilson notion that there is a moral obligation.
There we are. So that was, let me check my time. Yeah, that was our history on Woodrow Wilson. So next week we will get into impending convulsions and wrapping up on America's spiritual destiny and the last parts of Advent of Divine Justice. Hope you enjoyed today getting to learn a little bit more in depth on Woodrow Wilson as well as the twin processes. Any questions at this time?
So he is not appreciated, but he did a lot of things.
That's correct. That's correct. He did a lot of things. You're absolutely right. And that's the word of Abdul Baha. The unappreciated president. Exactly. Yeah, it was also educational for me, as I was preparing this course. I didn't, in all my studies, in school, they don't talk too much or even very favorable about Woodrow Wilson, and so this was very interesting. And obviously all the courses and studies on racial justice, he's not mentioned in any light as a favorable character for what he did to promote segregation and everything like that. But in the light of peace, what he did as taking that stance that no other individual ever even came close to. What he did is on a different league. And so granted that peace will never be established until the blacks and whites come together, and he was not doing that, right? But his work, as to say, trying to bring about the political unity, which would be the state working towards bringing about the lesser peace, that was significant. So that's go for it, Dennis. You have a hand, please.
Yes, I was thinking it ties into Wilson, but have you read the 2 letters to The Hague that Abdu'l-Baha wrote?
Yes, I have. Yes. Do you have any comments on them? Go for it.
It's just interesting. I just kind of pulled up briefly just to refresh myself, but a lot of the stuff of the material in the first letter, in book 2, a lot of those conversations is comes out of that. Also, I think the powerful part about the second letter was he said that the power of the for the world peace to come together, the power of the Holy Spirit would have to be immersed in this process. I'm paraphrasing that, but
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
yeah. So I thought that was very powerful stuff that he wrote.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Excellent, excellent point, dear Dennis. And always good to have you, dear Dennis and Mary. So happy to have you. So any other
I
thoughts?
think the circumstance was not okay at that time to, inform Woodrow Wilson about the Baha'i faith and then give him introductions and everything because of the war and too much going on in his administration. And then, but he did the political side, and then that is really nice for him because he don't have any knowledge about the manifestation of God. So
Great point there, Tesfaye. And this is a perfect example of that greater plan of God at work. Unconscious, and it just kind of happened that the daughter had, Baha'i books, and she was interested, and it kind of, through the daughter, that, involvement came, and the ideas per se trickled into, the president's mind or whatever. And as also mentioned, the ideas of the tablet to the Hague and all of these ideas, because of the activities and the involvement of the faith had reached a certain level. So that process of the minor plan had affected the major plan. And so there was reaching a certain point where now the president was now coming to the world scene and presenting the ideas of the faith unconsciously to the world. And that's why it was so significant in the sense of potentially bringing about a political unity of the world, and which would be the League of Nations. So is why it was a first. And
so he did a great job.
On that level.
On one side
we should always be very specific. I never want to say any person is stellar, across their life, unless the beloved guardian says this person across their whole life did a good job. On this specific level that he did as the unappreciated president, bringing about the signal for the most great peace, he did a good job. On the other aspect of really increasing segregation in our country and bringing about the second wave of the Ku Klux Klan in our country, I'm not cool, not good on any level. I mean, it was what he was a catalyst for bringing about the second wave of the Ku Klux Klan. And in the 1920s, 1930s, he did the screening for birth of a nation in the White House.
That is his lack of maturity.
But as mentioned in the video that I just showed, he didn't invent segregation, but he also didn't put it down, right? And so he was a Southerner. He agreed with it and he went along with it. And so. But on that one thing, promoting the most great peace, thumbs up. On everything else, on the aspect, I give thumbs down. So really, that's where I leave it on that, on Woodrow Wilson. And but he was unique, as the beloved guardian said. He is unique, and he is immortal in that sense, compared to all other presidents. And his record will be timeless. So anyway, dear friends.
The rest of them up to now, they didn't do nothing.
Well, don't say that either, Tesfaye.
It's very hard.
No, we do. the other lens is we cannot judge from our eyes, okay? It's like we're judging the past with our eyes of the present, right? So we don't know what was going on in their lives. Also, we don't know what everything they accomplished, what hurdles they accomplished, what injustices they had to fight. Remember, and also beware lest to judge the faults of another. That's another commandment of Allah. We shouldn't judge, period. So why are we judging presidents and the past?
In the writing, it says the future of America is obscure. That's what the Guardian say.
Right.
So that's to be, this time is to be, we are still, in the future, not yet done.
Yeah.
We are in
the only one we can judge is ourselves. It's the only person we can judge. And every day we should judge ourselves. That's what it is. Bring thyself to account each day. We should judge ourselves every day and say, am I a better person than I was yesterday? Have I done all the things that I'm supposed to do? And have I tried to amplify it, work harder, be better, magnify the faith, try to teach, do everything I can?
That is very true.
Yes, dear Claudia has a hand, please.
Okay. It sounded to me in that video clip that the influences of his presidency was very positive for the working class.
Yeah, that's what I understood too. Exactly. He was a people's president. That's what I learned from it. He from his involvement of going to Congress so many times, even though he was a PhD president, he didn't have to, but he was very much a people's president. He wanted to go and talk to Congress and reach out to them. And even the type of laws he enacted, the 8-hour workday, these type of things are directly benefiting the people and the population. So that's what I understood. I'm not saying it's true, that's Eson's understanding from the video. So that's it. But I encourage everyone to learn more, and that's what it's all about. Learn, study, read. Any other thoughts, insights from today's lesson or class or questions before we shut it down for tonight and have our closing prayer? Next week, we should finish up the closing parts of paragraphs 116 to 124. And then we'll take a 2-week break before we transition to dispensation of Baha'u'llah. So that will be the next one that we endeavor into. And that one will bring you into learning what are the beliefs of the Baha'i faith. So you will have a really strong understanding of who this incredible light is called the Bab, the blessed Bab. And that's something so awesome in this presentation. You will gain a greater awe of who the blessed Bab is as we go through this course of dispensation of Baha'u'llah. So I look forward to that one. And then obviously His Holiness Baha'u'llah, Abdul Baha, and the administrative order. And how the administrative order ties into this new per se construct, the institute process, this beautiful gem that has been unfolded by our supreme body. So where does that come in? And that is all part of this new, it's all part of the administrative order that is being unfolded. So that's all also in dispensation of Baha'u'llah will be part of the course. So that's going to be very educational too. And that we will start that in a couple of weeks. And as we're starting per se a new course, right? Dispensation, as always, you're free to invite anyone from your communities that you would like to join. Obviously, this is primarily for our dear Texan friends, but anyone that you would like to reach out in your communities, and you can let them know dispensation of Baha'u'llah, one of the world order letters, will be starting in 2 weeks after next week. So technically 3 weeks. Okay. Excellent, dear friends. Let us have a closing prayer, and then we will say goodnight to everyone. Thank you so, so much. As always, so happy to see all of you. My wife says, Ehsan, you're off to go see your dear friends, Miss Yuda Miller and Miss Luann and Donna, you know, and what about me? You don't love me? And I'm saying, dude, I love these guys. How could I not be with y'all once a week? So I just want to let you know how much I love you guys. And I look forward to another great finishing up Advent. How incredible is that? Okay. So let's have our closing prayer. Any one of you, dear friends, please share a prayer. Thank you. Oh, look at Dennis McGregor. And I didn't even see Miss Mary laughing tonight, but he volunteered himself. So cool. Thank you so much.
I was ready, but he's okay. That's fine.
Thank you, dear Tesfai. Next week, you start it up, okay? Thank you, dear Tesfai.
I'm going to do one for humanity.
Thank you.
O thou compassionate Lord, thou who art generous and able, we are servants of thy threshold beneath thy providence. We are servants of thy shelter beneath our providence. Okay. Cast thy glance of favor upon us. Give light to our eyes, hearing to our ears, and understanding and love to our hearts. Render our souls joyous and happy through thy glad tidings. O Lord, point out to us the pathway of thy kingdom. Resuscitate all of us through the breath of the Holy Spirit. Bestow upon us life everlasting, and confer upon us never-ending honor. Unify mankind and illumine the world of humanity. May we all follow that pathway, long for thy good pleasure, and seek the mysteries of thy kingdom. O God, unite us and connect our hearts with thy indissoluble bond. Verily, thou art the giver, thou art the kind one, thou art the Almighty. Abdul-Baha.
Wonderful, dear friends. Thank you, dear Dennis, and have a wonderful evening and
All
good
right.
night.
Have a good night, everybody. Be
Good
safe.
night.